Today's episode is brought to you by Delaware Orthopedic Specialists. The birds are back, and you know what that means. Dr. Mesa joining the pod on a weekly basis, providing the best up-to-the-minute updates on all of our Eagles. Let's hope that we don't have too much to talk to him about with injured birds this season, but he and any of the other wonderful providers at DOS can talk to you about ending injury that you or a loved one have been dealing with for far too long. The only fellowship-trained surgery center here in the state of Delaware, why would you trust anyone other than the specialists? Them being specialists means that they are specialized in each and every part of the body. So if you come in looking for a specific doctor for a specific part of the body, they've got you covered. They're going to hold your hand and walk you through every step of the process, and you're going to make sure that you're happy with all of your results. 302-655-9494 is how you get a hold of them on the phone, or head on over to delortho.com to schedule your appointment today. After they provide you with wonderful care, head on over to Google, give them a great review, and let them know that Talkin 215 sent you.
Welcome to Talkin 215, your go-to podcast for everything you need to know about Philly sports. Whether you bleed green, trust the process, fly with the Flyers, or fight with the Fightins, this is the place where we break down Broad Street. Jake, Sean, and Joey deep dive into the heart of Philly sports culture, breaking down games, roster moves, and sharing the stories that make the 215 truly legendary. So grab a cheesesteak, settle in, and let's get to Talkin 215. Now here's your host, Jake Biasato.
Tag team back again. Been so long with where I've been. Party on, people. Now let's begin. Say whoop, there it is. Let me hear you say
whoop, there it is.
Let me hear you say
whoop, there it is, Jake.
There we go. There we go. We're talking tag team, the original trio.
Whoop, there it is, Jake. Jacob, the whoop is there.
There we go. The dirty dozen divided by 4, because we got 3 of us here. The original trio of Talkin 215. Coach, as always, Papa Sean. And we got a great episode. I mean, the Eagles, they're back, boys. They're back. I mean, look, we all see the meme where you got from the wire where it's like, I want you to put the word out. We back up. Eagles are back up. I mean, look, we were all, I mean, specifically me. Surprisingly, Coach was the real positive one. But Sean and I are pretty pessimistic about what we saw, especially like that Browns win. We were like, yeah, they won, but the Browns suck, and the Eagles just sucked a little bit less that day. And from that point on, obviously, we know they're listening. We know they heard us. They heard Tommy Moon talking 2 weeks ago, saying the Eagles Giants game was the biggest game in Eagles history, talking about all this stuff, and they have answered the dinner bell. We got a great episode in store for you today. We're going to be talking about some of the greatest moments from that game that we talked about. We're talking about some of the top performances. We have Dr. Mesa from our friends over at Delaware Orthopedic Specialists hopping on, talking about some injury updates. I know Mailata is still out. I know Goddard's still out. Luckily, we didn't really leave that game with any too notable of injuries, but we're going to talk about a lot of things with that. And then we're just going to kind of see where the rest of the night takes us. But right off the bat, what was your guys' reaction in the first half? Heading in 10-10, what was your reaction heading into halftime?
So maybe even I don't want to call it a hot take, but I felt like this team was struggling so much during that first quarter, the first 3 quarters of the first half, that when we went into the half tied up, I said, this game's going to be an ass whipping. Like, we got this in the bag. It felt like we were trying to play catch up in like a foot race. And as soon as you caught up to that guy, like there's no going back from that. Like, it's all forward from there. So I was so relaxed that second half because I just knew that the tables had turned and the best shot that they had of pulling away from this was well behind them.
Yeah, I thought the Eagles 10-10, it seemed like the Bengals beat the piss out of us that whole first half, right? Like, or most of it. In my eyes, I was like, man, the Bengals are kind of doing whatever they want on offense. Our offense hasn't really picked it up too much. You know, the time of possession was crazy. Saquon really didn't get the run game going much at all. I was like, man, this is 10-10 is a blessing right now for the Birds. But at the same time, I was like, Cincinnati's got to be feeling like crap, you know, to be playing as well as they did. And it's 10-10 and we're in their stadium and they don't even have a lead at halftime. And we get the ball at the half. I was like, oh man, they left the door open and we're about to kick it down. Like it felt like they knew that they left the door open there.
Yeah. No, like to Sean's point, it felt like we were watching Rocky where him and Apollo Creed were running on the beach. And for the longest time, Rocky couldn't catch up to him. But then once he finally caught him, he took off. He ran away. So that was the Birds. They were fighting. They were chasing for what felt like that whole first half, even though the game was pretty close. And they kept that fight going, kept that chase going. And when they caught them, they just kept on running. And they did everything we asked them to do. I mean, they kept their foot on the gas. They got takeaways. They scored. They got some timely stops. And obviously, we saw they didn't really get anything going with the sacks. Like they had one sack that was shared between Nolan Smith and Milton Williams. Nolan Smith, we're going to talk about him some, having a great sophomore year, having a really nice start to his sophomore season here. But they did everything we asked them to do. They showed us everything we needed to see, and we're going to talk about more of it on Thursday. But this Eagles-Jags game couldn't come at a better time. Like, just to keep that momentum going. You're not going right into, all right, now you're hitting the teeth of the Ravens right after they're trading, making a big trade. We're just going right into, all right, this is another game that we should handle pretty well. We should knock the wheels off of them. So it's coming at a perfect time, and you're going to be there.
I'm going to be there. I mean, normally that's a bad luck type of thing, but I'm feeling good. I'm bringing the fam. We're going to be deep there. Really looking forward to being in the tailgate and the lots and hanging out with you guys and just getting ready to roll for this Eagles victory. I know a lot of Jacksonville people that are coming up too. Obviously, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, so I would love nothing more than to give them that Lincoln Financial Field hospitality and send them on an L back to Jacksonville.
Sean, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't think this needed to be at any particular time. This is a Jags team that is reeling, that probably just isn't very good to begin with, and is without their top two wideouts. So this could have happened week 1. This could have happened week 18. It's going to be an ass whooping and a half. Like, we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. We got a whole game to dissect, but just a little 10-second preview here. It's going to be a lot to a little, guys.
No, exactly. I have the snap count in front of me. We talked some of it last week, and for some of the same reasons, we're going to talk about more of it this week. Jordan Davis obviously played a little bit more. He played 12 last week. He almost doubled that. He had 22 this week. But again, we put it in a situation where we took them out of run situations. We took the ball out of Chase's hands, of Zach Moss's hands. We made it to where they had to throw the ball, and then we took advantage of some poor throws or just some throws into the wrong spot, and we handle business. So just kind of wanted to touch on thoughts on Jordan Davis, other snap counts that kind of stood out to me. Avonte Maddox only played 8 snaps, but it felt like 3 of them you knew right off the bat what they were because of the bad plays he made.
The Bengals knew when he was in the game.
Yeah.
The Bengals knew when he was in.
No kidding. And then Isaiah Rodgers played 17 snaps, and I thought he looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, the one thing that I was really excited to talk about during this game, because Jake, I know you and I had our players of the game to watch before the game, right?
We nailed it on offense.
We nailed it on offense, but I'm giving the edge to you because you had Jalen Hurts, who played arguably his best game of the year. I had Devontae Smith. They hooked up for a deep touchdown. So I think offense we nailed, but I give the edge to you. But when we were talking about players of the game and who did well and what we liked from the game, you could talk about Jalen, you could talk about Smitty, you could talk about Cooper DeJean. I want to talk about like 4 or 5 guys, not talk about them, but I just want to name them. And I want to say Fred Johnson, Tyler Steen, Grant Calcaterra, Isaiah Rodgers. And I think you know what all those guys –
Hats off to the boys.
I think you know what all those guys have in common, right? Like, they're not starters. They're not ever starting a game unless an injury or something happens. And if you were just an average casual fan and you didn't know the starting names of players, but you just watched the game, you'd be like, wow, that Fred Johnson must be one of the better left tackles in the league. Wow, that Tyler Steen's a bully at guard. Wow, that Isaiah Rodgers, he must be one of the more lockdown corners in the game. Grant Calcaterra is averaging 20 yards a catch the last 2-3 games. Like, he must be a deep threat at the tight end position. These guys are stepping up. When at the beginning of the year we thought we were so top heavy, you're seeing the depth come into play here and just stepping up. We needed it when we won the Super Bowl in 2017, and now you're seeing it in a game like yesterday. We won a game by 20 where we had that many starters out. That just shows you the depth and how serious these guys are taking those roles.
We won a game by 20 where we outscored them 27-7 in the second half.
Whew.
Yeah, I could not believe, much to your point, Coach, that like you totally forgot that we had backups in. We had two of our starting linemen were out, and it was 2 of the best, arguably some of the best at their position, and it quite simply didn't matter, right? Once this team got rolling, it was rolling. There was nothing you could do to stop, right? This is a Bengals team with a pretty solid defensive line, right? It didn't matter. It didn't matter one bit. Like this now, this offense is starting to look a little scary, right? Because I don't think it's going to matter much what team is on the other side of them. If they're clicking, and especially if Jalen is making these decisions the way we saw him in this game, it doesn't matter who we go against. It doesn't matter what week we catch the Jags. It doesn't matter which week we catch the Ravens. As long as we're just catching them, we're going to catch them all.
No, it's your point before the season started was, look, the offense is going to put up close to 30 points a game every game. Is as long as we have an average defense, we're going to win most of our games. And it's looking like that's what it's going to turn into. It's looking like every week they're getting more and more comfortable.
I don't know. Our defense might be the better unit. Like over the last month, are you kidding me? This defense has been elite. The offense has been good, borderline very good, right? At times, AJ Brown's been excellent, but without AJ Brown, it's a good offense. This defense, with if Avonte Maddox plays 0 snaps, this defense is one of the best in the league, bar none, over the last month, and it's not getting any worse. That's the optimistic part. Like, yeah, the defense just has to play okay, but that's because they're supposed to be getting better throughout the season. We're here. Like, these guys are playing lights out, and they're only going to get better from here. This is a young team.
Do you guys think it's a coincidence that the last 3 games for this defense, and the Eagles are 3-0 in these last 3 weeks, but the last 3 games for this defense, Cooper Dejean started the last 3 games? Do you think that's that much of a difference there? Because I personally, I'm starting to think it might be.
Look,
if you just watch the kid play.
All I know, I'm close with my grandparents. We've talked a lot the years, and I love hearing a lot of the stories they had about how things were a little bit different back then. But the one thing that really resounded in a lot of their stories was the milkman delivers. And that's what we saw on Sunday. The milkman delivers.
And they did.
So I think I've got a couple notes on Coop. I think he's been playing excellent. I still think that above all, it's addition by subtraction. That Maddox is just playing that terrible. Like, there are a couple game-changing plays on him, and you just mentioned it. They were targeting him as every single time they saw him out on the field. He cannot play another snap with the depth that we have at cornerback, right? There are too many hungry guys back here on the up and up. Right. Yeah. There's too many Keely Ringos. There's Eli Ricks is out there. You talk about Isaiah Rodgers just finally getting some snaps. That any one of those 3 guys is going to show us much more life than Avonte Maddox will at this point.
Sean, was it you and I that talked about it, or Coach, was it you and me that we were like, look, a Maddox, like Maddox, like we thought he was a very good player for a long time, and he was.
Yeah.
But it's just he wasn't able to recover from these pretty tough injuries that most people wouldn't be able to recover from. It's not a knock on him. He's just not the player he was anymore. He was a
fast twitch. He was a fast twitch athlete coming out of Pittsburgh. Perfect for the slot because he could go with quick guys. He can use in and out bursts. His lateral quickness was better than his straight line speed. But then when you have so many lower body injuries at that point, Sean, you probably understand this in the fitness industry. When you have so many lower body injuries at that point, and you're a quick twitch, fast twitch athlete, that's going to mess with you. If you take away someone's strength, what is that lateral cutting back and forth, and ask them to play a position, slot corner, where lateral agility is key, you're going to see a drop-off. We love Avonte Maddox. We really do. But, it's night and day between him and Coop in the slot. It just really is.
No, I mean, you talk about Sean knowing a lot about this. And look, hats off to him. If you want to get yoked, you want to look anywhere close to as good as him, he's the guy you want to reach out to. But you want to talk about guys that really understand these injuries and all, we got to go to our guy, Dr. Joseph Mesa from our friends at Delaware Orthopedic Specialist. Doc, we're talking about Maddox. He's not injured. Maybe we wish he was, but we are talking about the injury.
We don't, Jake.
No, it's a joke. We don't wish he's injured. We love Maddox, but whatever keeps him off field. We're talking about a guy that for a long time on this podcast, we said was the best slot corner in the NFL, and his play backed that up. And then he's had some significant injuries. And since he's come back, he's been a shell of his former self. We've seen exceptions to the standard. It seems like he's just fallen into, look, you've had these significant injuries. To Coach's point, it's a very fast twitch position where that slot you're covering guys running east to west, not so much north to south. You're seeing guys really make these cuts. Is this just stuff that we're probably seeing a guy that's no longer has that same kind of burst, that same kind of acceleration, explosiveness that he did prior to these injuries.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, you've seen it in athletes all the time. I mean, I remember the second time they brought Trotter around, I'm like, he can't make the plays he used to because he's put too much damage on his legs and he just can't get there. I mean, getting out, losing to a tight end is bad. I mean, that was a bad look in the game. So I think that, you're right. All these injuries pile up, and that's why you can't play football forever. There's a huge component to these things, and not people think, oh, they have this injury, they're going to get back and they're going to be their old self again. Well, there's only a finite amount of times you can come back from an injury and be yourself again. And I think he's had more than his fair share of injuries. And I agree, at one point he was the best slot corner in the NFL. And unfortunately, he's had a combination of bad luck and injuries that probably, have taken a huge toll on his ability.
No, certainly. Doc, we're seeing a guy in Dallas Goedert still out. They haven't put him on the IR yet. He's yet to do any kind of practicing whatsoever. Obviously, we've seen hamstring injuries, especially on this Eagles team this year, left and right. We see some more serious with Jordan Mailata going on IR. We saw A.J. Brown miss 3 weeks, but he also had a bye in there to recover. Is this something that he's probably not going to be back for the next week, possibly the next two, and they could have put him on short-term IR, or the fact that he still hasn't been put on IR? Obviously, you can't at this point, but the fact that he hasn't practiced at all leave you optimistic that he might be coming back this or possibly next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you assess these, from the beginning. You don't know game day, but then the next couple of days you get a good idea. And I think they probably maybe overestimated his recovery time and thought he'd be back sooner. But again, you don't want a Mike Evans situation where, you have this little tweak and you say, I'm good. And then boom, you have that big injury. And I think he's probably just hovering around the ability to get back. And I think, they probably are doing this week by week, game by game, just to see how he does. And, I would be surprised if he plays on Sunday. I think it's probably going to be later on. And I think, he's probably a week or two away. And unfortunately, sometimes you misjudge these things and think people are going to recover faster than they do. And I think, hindsight being what it is, they should have put him on IR, because he's missing 4 games. But I think they felt that they would be able to get him back out there sooner. And the other thing is, I think the other factor in this is I think the other tight ends are playing well. So it's not as, it's not as urgent as it could have been. Yeah. And I think they're just trying to be safe.
Doc, would he need a ramp up period? Like, say he says this week, I'm feeling good, and the Eagles are being cautious about him, playing against the Jags this Sunday because he's missed 3 weeks. Could there be a ramp up period where they say, I know you say you're back healthy due to this hamstring, but we want you to go hard this week in practice before we just throw you back out there?
Oh, absolutely. I think he has to do that. I mean, he has to get ramped up. You can't just go cold turkey into these situations. I mean, again, I always say there's no substitute for live play, but a hard practice is a close second. So I think you have to see how he can cut, because you don't want an episode where he goes out for a play and then you lose him for another 6 weeks. So you're definitely going to be cautious that way. And I do think they're going to do everything before they send him back out there.
Yeah. No, I feel like I'm turning into coach here because you talked about Mike Evans, talking about Goddard. I have Goddard, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, who's finally back. I mean, this is one of my dynasty leagues where it's like a large team, but I've caught the Coach Joey IR trend here where I just seem to be living on the waiver wire. But Lane Johnson, we thought we might have to talk about him. Thankfully, it seemed that it was something that was just, a time and place. Like it hurt for a quick moment. He was able to walk it off and then come right back one snap later. Watching that injury, you see him rolling on the ground afterwards, and you think, oh, this is terrible. You watch the replay, and I didn't see much. Like, it looked like it got rolled up on a little bit, but you don't see much lateral movement, anything like that. You don't see that telltale where you're watching, you're like, oh, damn, like he just got it crunched. And then obviously he was able to come right back because he came back and still played at a high level. It's not something that we should worry about flaring up later in the week, correct?
No, my first thought was I think he just got, I told somebody because they were like, oh, it's his hand, it's his Achilles. And I said, no, he probably had a direct injury, and that hurts. Like if you're tense and you get hit and that muscle's under tension, it's going to hurt a lot. But you give it a minute, you shake it off, and I think that was purely just a hit in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well,
and,
we also know if anybody can shake it off in the NFL, it's Lane Johnson.
Yeah, and I think that when I saw the replay, I'm like, okay, this is not this is not a Deshaun Watson situation, or this was just he got hit.
What
in the
a
wrong
shame,
spot.
right? Oh,
yeah, it's a tragedy.
Wouldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the mechanism's totally different. And I think he was just, and a lot of times it's crazy when you're alignment, you're getting hit. You don't even know where you're getting hit from, and you can't brace for it or anything. Like if you're a running back, at least you usually see where it's coming from. Here, you're getting hit at all angles. I think he just, getting rolled up can cause some pain, and fortunately it's temporary. So I don't think this is going to be a lingering problem for him.
Or if you're a cornerback and Saquon Barkley's running with a full head of steam at you, you can see exactly where it's coming from.
You're getting trucked. Yep.
No, seriously. Thankfully, there wasn't any other significant injuries leaving that game for us to really talk about. And I thought you were saying actually, and I was like, oh, damn it.
Well, I mean, Darius Slay, obviously.
Oh, shit, you're right.
Yeah, and that's one that's worrisome because he's getting an MRI of his groin. Depending on the outcome, this can range from, a minor thing to something that ultimately may lead to a surgery, depending on the severity of it. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Well, Doc, for when Dan makes a clip of this, for people listening on Spotify, you're already going to be like, well, Jake missed that one. But for when Dan's making a clip of this, I'm going to start off big. Doc, Darius Slay, we saw him leave the game with a groin injury. Just a huge loss for the Eagles. First guy we're talking about with injuries.
Good call, Jake.
What he's going on with that? I hear he's having an MRI this week of his groin. What are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's concerning. I mean, obviously, if you tweak it a little bit, they're not going to do anything. But if there's any concern that there's any structural damage, they're going to get an MRI. And depending on what the MRI shows, this could run the gamut from a small time off to IR to even a season-ending injury, depending on how bad it is. I didn't actually see where he got hurt. I just knew that he left the game. And a lot of times guys leave the game, like Lane did for a short period. So when he didn't return, it was concerning. And then the fact that they're getting an MRI is also a concerning sign.
Doc, is that in the area of sports hernia at all? Territory?
Yeah. So if you look at it and you I use the pelvic bone as like the dividing line, like the border, so to speak. If it's above, it's an abdominal injury, and that's what used to be called a sports hernia. Now we're referring to it as a core muscle injury. So it could be either abdominal or it could be from your hip muscle. So if it's above the pelvis, it's usually an abdominal injury. And those are the traditional sports hernias, which guys, depending on the severity, can play with, but a lot of them ultimately get surgery to correct. And then the other side of it is the adductor, the abductor, the thigh, the big thigh muscles that attach on the undersurface of that bone or the bottom part of that bone. So the pain is in the same area. You really have to do a good exam to see whether it's coming from high or low. But ultimately, these core muscle injuries can be fairly debilitating either way.
Well, obviously, we've seen. I've turned my script on Darius Slay. You see the difference between when he is on the field and when he's not on the field. Isaiah Rodgers showed a lot of promise, but going to need to see a lot before we're like, all right, don't worry, we're still fine at outside corner. So we're hoping that it's something that completely comes back negative. Maybe he misses a week. This would be the week to miss with them losing Christian Kirk and all, and this play that we've seen from these guys coming back to the link. But hopefully he's back in a week or two, right back to the Darius Slay that we know and love, and we can just keep riding him into the postseason.
No, we can be hopeful. I mean, obviously, at this level, we're getting MRIs a lot faster than the average person would get. But, I think it's concerning enough for them to get further imaging. So hopefully it's a few weeks and he's back.
Oh, certainly.
Oh.
Doc, we've seen now back-to-back weeks where the Eagles handle business easily. We saw a lot of backups come in late in the game. Is this something, I know you were somewhat in the middle when we were having all these debates between Sean and I and coach and everything. Is this something that you feel like it's a young team, new coordinators, they're coming into their own, and this is the rise that we're going to see them take off on? Or is it something that you still need to see a little bit more against, some more consistent opponents, to where the Bengals, we know, are a pretty good team, but their record is 3-5 now. Or what are your thoughts with this?
I saw a lot of good in this game. I mean, first of all, they're playing a good opponent on the road. They're playing a good quarterback who's usually our kryptonite. And you saw some things. I mean, you saw Nakobe Dean making some big hits. You saw, people getting, fourth down stops. I mean, I think there's more intelligent football going on. I mean, this is a million miles away from what we saw at the end of last year. I mean, this team is making strides and leaps and bounds. I don't know. I don't think it's a perfect thing right now. I still think there's issues with the defensive line in terms of they're getting to the quarterback more. You're seeing Nolan Smith penetrate more, but I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see a little bit more penetration with the defensive line. But I mean, the linebacker play has been better than we've seen in probably 5 years or since the Super Bowl year. And the D-backs are playing well. I mean, I think that, we got a gift in our number 1 draft pick, and that guy is going to be a stud for years, barring injury. But I think everything's positive. And I think the thing is, they're starting. I think the coordinators are learning what the players like, especially like Jalen Hurts. They're kind of getting sort of playing to his strengths a little bit more. I mean, he still likes to throw the home run ball, and he threw one, but I think he's starting to play a little bit more intelligently. He's not turning the ball over, and I think that's a plus. I think the offense is a work in progress as well as the defense. But I kind of took this year as, okay, you got 2 new coordinators. You got to give them a year, especially when they weren't involved in the draft. They weren't involved in any of the trades, Well, I don't know if they were involved in the draft, but the trades definitely were before Fangio was on. So I think this is sort of like he sees what he has. He's working with what he has. And going forward, he'll be able to say, okay, this is the guy I want. This is the guy we should target. And I think that's going to lead to better success for the team.
Yeah.
That's a great point. You got to give them time, right? You have to.
Yeah. I mean, 1 year. I mean, and that's not asking much. I mean, we're very, very selfish and greedy, and rightfully so. We want success right away. But honestly, it's just you want to see things going forward. And seeing these young players actually start to show promise is very helpful. You don't want to say, well, that was a wasted first-round pick, and that was a bad pick, and that was a bad pick. And now you're saying, well, maybe this guy's salvageable. This guy's doing better. Carter's been a beast. So, I mean, it's turning out in a good way, I think.
No, for sure. Well, Doc, really appreciate the time. As always, if you or anyone has any needs, head on over to delortho.com or give them a call, 302-655-9494. You're going to get the top care from a top specialist. Why would you trust anyone other than a specialist? Doc, really appreciate it, as always.
Oh, thanks. Good seeing you guys.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doc.
All right, take care.
Today's episode is brought to you by White Glove Car Wash. Wintertime is coming, and you know what that means. Salt and brine on the roads. The leaves are going to start falling. You're going to have crap all over your car in no time. There's no better place to get it spick and span than a White Glove Car Wash. Now offering unlimited packages starting as low as $25 a month. You can go and get your car washed as many times as you want, so you can get any level of car enthusiast in your life the best gift that they can ask for. The ability to go daily and get that little perfect car of theirs clean, spick, and span. White Glove Car Wash with locations in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. You are never too far from the glove. All you have to do is ask your phone, take me to White Glove Car Wash, and your phone is going to direct you to the best car wash in the tri-state area. Let them know that Talkin 215 sent you. I thought he made a lot of really good points there at the end. I mean, they need time. Obviously, we're a very impatient city, impatient fan base, but you're seeing them just continue to come into their own. You're seeing Vic Fangio just continue to have his fingerprints all over this defense, finding out which guys he want. We talked about Isaiah Rodgers couldn't sniff the field even when you saw Darius miss times for a snap or two. Now you're seeing him kind of come into his own. There's probably a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes at practice that's gotten him into that role. You're seeing guys, he's really figuring out the rotation with the defensive lines, defensive ends, linebackers, everything seems to kind of be figuring out what piece goes where. And he's assembling this 500-piece puzzle a lot quicker than we thought it might occur. But I thought his biggest point that was great there was he said, look, this team right now is miles away from the way the season ended last year. Even the season before the end of the season when we were winning last year, it's even miles away from our winning time last season. Where we're handling business, we're beating the shit out of teams right now.
Yeah, and what you saw at the end of last year was a team that was constantly on the down and down, right?
Yeah.
This was not a well-coached team. This is a team that listen, we started off hot and then we took a couple steps back in weeks 2 and 3. And that was a little confounding. We didn't sure know what the hell's going on, what kind of coaching this team was getting. But ever since then, you have seen the progression where every single unit is just improving. It's every single one. It's the defensive line looks like they're rushing as a cohesive unit. The linebackers have continued almost all season. They've been fantastic on the defense. The secondary has improved. Maybe it's because it's less Avonte Maddox. Maybe it's because guys are getting healthy and Cooper Dejean. But in any event, they're playing fantastic, right? I mean, there's barely a unit that you can think of that you're thinking isn't playing considerably better than weeks 2 and 3 right now. Are there?
No, I couldn't.
None that come to mind.
No.
No,
And
I
like
mean,
even with
a
the
couple
offensive
of them.
line injuries that we have, the offensive
And
line
they've
is
stayed
playing
steady
great.
despite injury. So that for me is a huge win, probably just as much as any other singular unit, right? I mean, this team is playing fantastically, and you can see even just the passing charts, right? The route trees at the end of the game, and every single week it's getting a little more and more complicated every single week, where you can see that Jalen on Mondays, on Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I mean, they're implementing stuff that wasn't in the week prior, and it's just one step at a time. They're just getting better and better.
Yeah.
And you talk about the personnel too, like whether it be route trees, whether it be continuity and giving them time. We've played one football game all year with Goddard, Smitty, and AJ on the field at the same time. One. And that was the first game of the year where you're testing things out. You're in another country, you're trying to get your P's and Q's together. One game where that trio has been on the field at the same time. That's crazy to me. And then you look on the defensive side. I know we're 3-0 in our last 3 games, but Cooper Dejean has only started in these 3 games. It's only been 3 games that he started. And you have it's funny to think about, because we talk about how well the defense is playing. But let's just say Slay has to miss time. You have a rookie starting outside corner, a first-year starting outside corner with the team in Isaiah Rodgers, a rookie slot corner. You have CJ, who wasn't in this system last year, Detroit, and the only mainstay was Reed Blankenship. So you have 4 of your 5 new starters in the secondary, and you're playing out of your mind. I think that's great to see. You can look into Kobe Dean and Zach Bond. They weren't starters last year either. That's 2 more people. So it's crazy to see all these pieces just come together, come up and like just absorb Vic's scheme. And it's just really cool to see, outside of a couple things that I want to it's been good lately.
Yeah. No, it's great to see. We talked about how difficult this offense and defense are going to be able to grasp for a lot of these new guys, especially with how young our defense is, how many new players we have on defense. Obviously, whether you played with us or not last year, this is a completely new scheme, new system, and everything. So it's going to take a lot of time to grasp. But these guys with no NFL experience or very limited NFL experience or no experience with Vic Fangio are just getting it. And they're just getting it, and it's transitioning and translating to big plays on the field, which is so massive to see. And yeah, we didn't necessarily have a true closer. We talked about like who's going to be the closer. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers and CJ obviously came up with a big sack there, but we didn't have that person come out and really close the game other than the offense. Like, we didn't need a defensive closer this week because Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and Grant Calcaterra and that offensive line all went out there and handled business and closed everything we needed to.
You know what's a crazy stat from that game? Do you guys remember the awful pass Hurts threw to Gainwell in the flat where it was almost intercepted? Kind of like he wasn't looking. He just was throwing to his check down without looking. Since that pass, Hurts went for the rest of the game 14 of 14, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Are you kidding me?
With the team on his back.
That's not bad.
That was the man possessed. I tell you what, he even looks faster. He even looks faster. 1 cleat, 2 cleats, identical cleats, different cleats. It doesn't matter. Jordan 4, Jordan 11. Take your pick. The guy looks faster. The guy looks like
someone into a breakdancer on that one run up the middle. Like somebody just started breakdancing in the middle of the field when he did that hard cut. It was beautiful.
But I mean, he's got power. He's got he's got the lateral quickness. I don't know. It almost made me think that maybe he was hurt or nursing something, that maybe he wasn't that nobody else had really mentioned, because man, over the last month, it seems like he's gotten a step and a half quicker.
No, it's really been impressive. It's to your point. And look, thankfully we still have Doc here. Doc,
Yeah.
you still with us?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So we're talking about Jalen Hurts looking quicker and all. Like, you didn't see anything that would make you think like he's been lingering with anything, or is there anything that would make you think like, all right, after this amount of time, the conditioning just keeps getting better and better, that he now is playing faster?
Well, I think it's condition and confidence. I think you have to be, confident that you're doing the right thing. I think his conviction to the run is much better than it's been. It's not like he just makes the decision and goes. And I think that comes with feeling good, number one, and knowing you're doing the right thing. And I think that's a part of the conversation between him and the coaches. Like, this is what we're going to do. And I think now you're getting a more unified, decisive coaching. He's been having different coaches, different coordinators all through his career. And I think now he's got the chance to be an active partner with Kellen and say, look, this is what I think we should do. And I think that communication, as that improves, his performance improves as well. So I think, everybody's banged up by week 7, 8, whatever it is. But I think that it's that confidence in him knowing that these guys have their back, and, there is definitely a plan ahead. I mean, that like I said, harkening back to last season, it seemed like it was like sandlot football. Like, hey, just go out and I'll see if I can find you, And I think it's definitely, that's toned down. It's gone away, whether it was, last year's coaches or Sirianni or whatever. But I think now they're getting in a better position. I think Sirianni's taking a little bit of backseat, doing what he can do to kind of get the team going without, the X's and O's, leaving that to Kellen and Jalen. And I think that's a definite step in the right direction.
No, it's another great point. Just talking about Sean, you're right. No is my filler word. I say no almost to start every sentence that comes back to me.
We're not disagreeing, buddy.
No,
you don't have to say.
It's another great point you bring up there with his confidence heading into those runs. You see design runs, and how many did you see where they were obviously designed? It was a one step and then go, but he seemed hesitant. It seemed you knew right when the ball was snapped, oh, he's about to run this, because it's just like telegraphed, and he's kind of like looking, all right, well, maybe I go this way, and then he starts leaning away. Oh, it's kind of opening up over here. And you've seen these past 2 weeks where ball comes, he takes that one step, plants that foot like it's on a starting block, and then takes off. You're just seeing just gone.
Well, how many times did you see him give himself up when he was 2-3 yards away from a guy? Like, there was just a commitment to giving himself up the first month and a half of the season. And over the last couple games, there's been a commitment to shaking somebody out of their cleats or running them over. And it's the difference in attitude has made just the whole world.
You're seeing that throughout all the Eagles. The Eagles are just playing with an edge. They're just playing mean. They're saying, look, man, you can stay on the tracks, but the train ain't stopping.
Yeah, it's been
it's the Saquon effect.
The tackling's been better too. I mean, defensive.
Yeah. Well, you got Maddox out of there. Cooper Dejean. Listen, I not to wax too poetic about Dejean here, but there was 2 big things that jump out to me. First off, the guy is a good form tackler. Okay. He's breaking down, he's wrapping up, he's driving, right? He's getting his head on the right side of the ball carrier, and he's driving guys to the ground, right? Second, guys, we've talked about how the corners that we picked have had a lot more experience in college than some of these other high draft picks. He is calling out coverages before the snap. He's like the mic out there for the secondary. Anytime there's any sort of motion, he's telling guys, he's moving them around. He looks like a veteran out there. Like, those are the 2 things that I have just been like most impressed with out of all the good things that he's been doing out there. And I like, kudos to Howie at this point, Howie and Fangio, for picking a smart player and coaching him up to not be afraid to be a smart player out there. I've just been wholly impressed with him.
It's a wonderful point with not being afraid to make those calls. I mean, imagine being in that position.
How many guys? It's your 3rd NFL game. Like, and you actually have the courage to like say things out loud. Like, even if you did know them, a good percentage of players are just keeping their mouth shut. right? They're not going to yell at a guy that's got 6, 7, 8 years in the league, right? They're not reminding Slay over there, who's got a decade of being an all-pro, what to do. And here he is. You know, he knows it. He's recognizing it, and he's telling all the guys. And guess what? We've been averaging 12.1 points per game ever since he stepped foot onto the field starting. Come on, it's not a coincidence.
You know, when the NFL Combine comes around, us as fans, we get so enamored with the quote unquote underwear Olympics, right? How fast is the guy going to run? How high is he going to jump? You know, what is his bench? And I'm not going to lie, I'm a football junkie, so I like that stuff too, right? Because if you have two guys that are comparable and one's faster, bigger, and stronger, I'll take this guy if they're comparable, right? But the combine starts, I think, 3 days before we see anything on television. And that's medicals, that's meetings, that's behind the scenes stuff. And I'm going to compare two players right now for you guys. Cooper Dejean, who we're talking about a lot, and Devin White. If you just go to YouTube and type in Devin White LSU highlights, you're going to see the greatest linebacker you think you've ever seen in the history of mankind. A guy that's blitzing, sideline to sideline, following around everywhere. However, we don't know as fans if he is just told, see ball, get ball. See ball, get ball. Your job on this play is to go wherever the running back goes. That's it. At Iowa, when you hear their defensive coaches break things down, the safety needs to know what the linebacker's doing. The linebacker needs to know what the corner's doing. The corner needs to know what the defensive end is doing. The defensive end needs to know what the other corner's doing. They instill a game plan that is so fundamentally sound where you need to know every position. And while the highlights on tape may not scream out to you, to Sean's point, when he just talked about there, calling out the checks, the audibles, the plays, switching from man to zone, cover 6, backside, cover 4, cover 2, come down, whatever it is, that's what separates football players from athletes. Cooper Dejean just happens to be a great athlete, but you see a guy like Devin White, who you're like, he's so physically gifted. What's going on? If you can't get into that football player mode, like a guy like Cooper can, then you see what type of a difference it makes on the defense. And I think that goes a long way. Finding out what these guys can do in the classroom, chalkboard, meeting room, and how that translates.
I mean, just watching, my favorite video I've seen is watching that 4th down play. He just mirrors Chase. And that's a rookie doing that on one of the best athletes in the NFL, not only receiver, and he stops him dead in his tracks. I mean, that is a veteran play. You'd see that from, Kyle Hamilton or Ed Reed or somebody like that. And seeing a kid do that is phenomenal. I can't get over. I watched that play like 100 times. I'm like, that is amazing. It's
and
amazing.
Doc, I don't want to shit on Avonte Maddox like we've been doing a little bit, but if that's Maddox on that play, I think everybody on this show believes Jamar Chase gets the first down there. Like, are we all in agreement there?
I think it was a pretty terrible play call, but yeah.
I thought it was a good play call because it's tough for someone to mirror match and get through. I posted something on Twitter. He had to get through junk to get around there. It was almost like a mesh concept design pick, but not called a pick because he was in the backfield. It was a pretty cool concept. And I'll be honest, Jake, like if I have Jamar Chase one-on-one with a rookie, I'm throwing him that ball in the flat 9 times out of 10 too.
Yeah. The coaches are probably like, this kid's not going to pick this up. Shame on them.
But the kid is sound, man.
Maddox is out there. He just closes his eyes, tucks his head, and does a little swirl while he's diving towards the ground and hopes that somebody trips over him.
Yeah, he does the Asante Samuel tackle. Look, Asante Samuel, great corner. Boy, just all he did was close his eyes and throw his weight at the receiver's legs and hope that he made contact.
Shout out my former Knight, UCF, baby.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Fan of the podcast, Asante Samuel.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I've got to play a little basketball to work off some of this stomach. We can't all be just Adonises like the 3 gentlemen on the screen right now. No, stop, Doc. But great episode, great time, great sports. I am looking forward to talking, Sixers, Flyers, Phillies offseason. Andrew Painter's making his 4th start in the fall league. Looking forward to breaking some of that down and everything. But when the Birds are playing this hot, you can't not talk about them. Most of us are going to be in the H lot for this Sunday's game for the tailgate. I'm not going to the game, but I'm going to be tailgating with Joey. Have the opportunity to see him in person again. So always a fun time. Hopefully get a few brewskis in him. Hopefully it won't be pouring down monsoon weather. And hopefully we'll see you there. Final thought, Sean, starting with you.
We are so back.
Coach.
People keep asking if we're back. And yeah, I'm thinking we're back.
Doc.
Washington's in for a comeuppance. I don't want to look past any games, but I want those Commanders at home.
Come with the comeuppance.
Yeah. We owe
Okay.
them.
We
That's
do.
for sure. That's for sure. Final thought. Go Birds.